Hello, everyone. Today, we're going to be discussing the topic of intrapersonal communication and how it impacts and benefits us humans as we know it. I want to jump into the topic of self concept as our first one today. People think self concept is a simple description of themselves, but in reality, it is split up into three sections. The first one being self image, second one being self worth, and the third one being ideal self. First one, self-image is the layout of one's view of themselves. People have the option, though, to choose whether or not their self-image is good or bad. How we view ourselves truly impacts us heavily. So, having a positive outlook can bring better overall insight about oneself. On the other hand, negativity can interfere in someone's growth mentally. Second one, self-worth corresponds with ideals of self-image. Self-worth is the persona of value you want to be or become. This can be twisted though by the arbitrary traits such as social standing, money worth, and more. People worry too much about the others' perspectives that can decrease their own self-worth, causing them to change their way for one's approval. Everyone needs to be knowledgeable enough to set standards that don't revolve around other people's views. What really matters though is the internal characteristics that one can have. Great attributes can shape a good self-image, making self-worth not too hard to see. People need to surround themselves with friends and activities that go under their style. This can help to a good foundation to self-concept. The last element of self-concept is ideal self. Ideal self is gained from influence of others. It's how you strive to be in the future, and one needs to have the parallels of their real self and ideal selves to achieve this. Going big is not always bad, but staying in your range can prove more beneficial. One's ideal self comes from their basis of their self-image and their self-worth. Being aware of your strengths and weaknesses in yourself can lay out a realistic ideal self that can be gainable. All these terms differ on how you view each subscript of self-concept. For instance, if self-concept is not congruent or all of them are connected in some way, people are forgetting to fill a spot in the self-concepts. But in contrast, a good understanding to these three concepts will show a good balance in self-concept. So, if you have a good balance in each one of self-image, self-worth, and ideal self, you can maintain a good self-concept. The second topic I want to talk today is self-esteem. Self-esteem is a complex subject with an in-depth meaning. It can be stated to be a person's assessment over their emotions and opinions. Factors that key into self-esteem are limitations and abilities. Being able to know your disadvantages and advantages mutually is important for a good self-esteem. One term that helps explain self-esteem would be self-compassion. Understanding self-compassion fully gives people better psychological knowledge. Self-compassion is formed under three parts. The first one being self-kindness is the most fundamental of them all. Giving love back to yourself is step one before anything else. Kindness towards one's own being can prove helpful when trying to give others kindness. One will not be able to comprehend others' feelings if theirs is uncleared. The second one, common humanity, is a very crucial component. Seeing the experiences throughout your life were hard to fathom, but realizing that some events that happened to us concurred with multiple others of a people. Pain and suffering happens to everyone in this world. Some may be worse or good. The thought to take away from this is that people everywhere experience hurt, and we all need to look at the pain differently. It's transparent in our lives, and it's inevitable. But knowing it is common through us humans helps people push through hardship easier. The last component of self-compassion is mindfulness. This ties in a lot with common humanity with the following same narrative of suffering. It means being aware towards one's suffering. Mindfulness is important because knowing how to handle challenges in our minds helps us seek for compassion to purify our thoughts. This is something that cannot be taken for granted. Self-compassion blends in with self-esteem like peanut butter and jelly. A person cannot have one without the other. It's essential to know that both so one can have a stable emotional state. The third topic I want to talk today is cognitive dispositions. Cognitive dispositions is vital when discussing intrapersonal communications. It's described as mental patterns that impact our way of doing activities. There are 4 different processes of thinking we use in our lives. The first one is locus of control. People could take on 2 different forms of loci. Internal locus control is where you're the driver of your behavior. On the other hand, external locus control is meaning outside activity is controlling or can control your behavior. I believe internal loci is better because knowing that your choice is the most effective can bring upbringings, while external loci can be assumed by luck. The second cognitive disposition is cognitive complexity. It states that it is the ability to recognize resources and sort out an outcome. People with a higher sense of cognitive complexity can depict communication patterns and get a grasp of who they are talking to better. In contrast, one won't be able to understand as much as someone with a higher sense. 2 subterms that can be listed to understand cognitive complexity better is integration and abstraction. Integration is figuring out details to enhance understanding of nonverbal activity. This is more concrete than abstraction because one forms an idea from basic elements instead of thought. Abstraction is more comprehensive because it makes one have to think abstractly and outside the box to understand cues. This process takes time to master, and even myself has even come close. With these 2 terms, one can understand cognitive complexity efficiently and display these traits in intrapersonal communication. The last cognitive disposition is emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is the manipulation of one's emotions and others that helps one with daily communication. There are 4 steps in this process. 1. Being able to tell emotion. 2. Using one's emotion in interaction. 3. Handling your emotion internally and externally. And last of all, understanding emotion that occurs in one and others. Emotional intelligence is well suited for both forms of communication. It's a good building mechanism to handle your emotions. All the sections under cognitive complexity can be help people truly understand the intellectual side of communication. I thought adding this into the video can help bring depth to communication for beginners who don't fully know. And I know I forgot to add authorism and dogmatism, but I feel as that wouldn't follow the plot of my video. The last topic I want to talk about today is temperament. Temperament is an interesting topic, and I thought people need to know this concept. It is closely related to personality, but different in many ways. The meaning behind this word is the individual's genetic behavior structure. So to explain more, temperament comes at a younger stage of life instead of gaining over time like personality. Aspects from one family can be passed on and stay as lifelong traits for one's life. This is what sets you apart from other people. People have different temperament styles, causing diversity in all of our traits. Foundation of our family's policy has changed and formatted our way of thinking. Temperament can be beneficial or detrimental. People can learn to strive away from bad habits and induce better emotional responses in their life. In some situations, people are accustomed to their standards and feel as it works fine for them. Knowing temperament can involve someone's perception of differences between personality and temperament. This is something people need to recognize for better overall understanding your doings. After discussing all the topics we have today, I think you can finally realize why intrapersonal communication is so important. With all these factors, you gotta realize that intrapersonal communication is the foundation of our mind. We don't even know it. The reason I say this is because it helps us navigate our relationships with our families, our friends, any relationship with a human interaction. Also, it can help us manage stress, depression, loneliness, all these psychological factors that come into play in everybody's lives. And last of all, it helps us make decisions that are best to our liking. This intrapersonal communication is an important topic that everybody needs to talk about in everyday society. And I believe if interpersonal communication can be spread out throughout the world, I think mental health can see a decline in numbers. Thank you.